She's been the one to say, Mommy, go after your dreams. What you pour into your children, they turn back and pour that into you as well.
Welcome back to Happiness and Progress. I'm your host, Danielle Craig. I'm an Emmy Award-winning journalist, a mom, wife, and you know what I like to say, just a person looking for more joy in the everyday. This podcast is brought to you by the Mail Tribune. You can find more podcasts at mailtribune.com. Today, you get to meet one of my favorite people, award-winning TV broadcaster and reporter, Lee Arneaud. She is the host of Taste the Islands, which you can catch on Amazon Prime TV. She's also the host of School Duel, which is a premier high school academic game show in South Florida. She has experience reporting for Miami Heat's Heat TV, as well as the local news in Miami and being a radio host. She was featured as Miami's top 40 under 40 leaders of tomorrow in Legacy magazine, and she has launched the LA PR firm in an effort to help business owners and brands tell their story. Today, while she has done all of that, what we're going to talk about is being the mom of 3. The reason I wanted to talk to her about this, although she has so much more she can talk about, she's probably going to have to come back on at another time, but I wanted to talk about motherhood because it just seems like it's something she has really honed in on and perfected. And she has these incredible relationships with her children. She's very real in this conversation and I appreciate that as well, because parenting is hard. So what we're going to talk about in this episode is enjoying your children, enjoying them through the good and the bad and the ugly, how she puts trust and honesty first, why she lets her children have social media accounts, and we're also going to talk a little bit about her childhood and what it was like for her to grow up as a first-generation American and how she chooses diversity for her children. We have that and a lot more in this conversation, so let's jump in. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
You're welcome, Danielle.
There's so many things I want to talk about with you, so we'll see what we can get to, but I definitely want to start with the way that you parent, because it seems like you have really mastered enjoying your children and being engaged in their lives. Do you feel like that's true, or am I just picking that up?
Social media is social media, so you're seeing what I filter and I choose to show you. But no, I do enjoy my kids. I can honestly say that I've married a happy person and I'm an overall happy person. And we choose happiness and we choose to make the best of any situation. And there's been a lot of really horrible stories that I could share with you that I've been through as a mother. You talking about, life and death situations with my kids, injuries, we frequent the ER a lot, was just there last week. But for the most part, yes, I do enjoy my children, and my children enjoy my husband and I as well. So we are a family that we enjoy each other. Yes, that's true. We do.
I love it. How do you think you've cultivated that relationship because now you have a young adult daughter, a teenage son, right? And then a son coming up on the tweens.
Yes. So my kids are 19, one in college, wrapped up her sophomore year just now. I have one who's 7. So that's my daughter. I have a 17-year-old son who just wrapped up his junior year in high school. And then we have the 9-year-old, and he's a boy.
So how did you cultivate this relationship where you enjoy being together?
Again, I think that it starts from the parents. My husband and I, we do have a happy marriage. We are happy people. We're fun-loving, happy people, and we enjoy life. And I think a lot of it starts with our marriage, of us enjoying each other. And then the kids were brought into this situation in this home where we developed love for them to an instant love, instant gratitude for the fact that they were in our lives, and we appreciate our children. And one thing that I think as a mother that has been my mantra is to never lie to my kids. I've never hidden who I am. There are going to be no surprises on when I'm dead and there's a funeral and people are getting up and they're talking about Lisa and they're saying things about her. I don't think my children are going to be surprised at anything they hear. I have been my authentic self around them. They've seen me cry. They have seen me frustrated. They have seen me happy. When we would go to the doctor and they would say, Mommy, is this shot going to hurt? Am I getting a shot? I would tell them, yes, you're getting a shot today. Yes, it's probably going to hurt, but it won't be like life ending. It might hurt for a second. And I always felt like starting with the truth when they were really little was going to make a difference when they did become teenagers, so that they know that they can always come to me for the truth. So that was really important in developing a relationship and a friendship. I know, should you be friends with your kids, and you hear these kind of scenarios, but at the end of the day, yes, there should be an element of you being a good friend to your child. And a good friend means accepting them for who they are. A good friend comes in with being a good parent, with giving them boundaries and discipline. And that's one thing that we were big on: discipline and boundaries, expectations. My kids knew what my expectations were and what they are, but I still allowed them to develop and grow into who they want to be. So I never tried to stifle any of their gifts, any of their talents. We just always tried to encourage them and expose them to things that we weren't exposed to, or things we were exposed to, but just wanted to enhance on.
Oh my goodness. Oh, I love that so much.
Thank
The
you.
starting with trust is such a big deal. Now that they're older and you're in those years that parents get afraid of, the teenage years, the young adult years, how has them being able to trust you helped them with what they come to you for?
That's a great
They're not
question.
lying, they're coming to you.
Yeah, that's you know what? You forgot to add those teenage years, the years that you literally want to throw them through the wall. And they attempt to throw them through the wall. But you, best advice that was given to me was that you have to love them through it, and you have to sometimes drag them to the finish line.
Mm.
And I think for me, I was that mom. I gave up my career in broadcasting so that I could cultivate the nurturing environment that I wanted to have with my kids and be able to be there for them. So I used my skills that I had from journalism school and my natural God-given talents of being a good writer, being a good orator, being a good person who can disseminate information. I've rolled those up into various jobs through the years, but I always made sure that I had the schedule that my kids had. So some years I taught, and I was on the same schedule with them. So I was around. And because I was around and I had the flexibility to be there for them, I became the mom that transported all their friends when they needed to go somewhere. I helped out all the single moms that I knew around me. If their child needed a ride somewhere or needed to get somewhere, I became that mother that was transporting the kids, and our home became the home that was the home that all the kids would come to. We'd order the boxes of pizza. I would feed them, and I could hear the conversations that were going on. I could see what was going on. And that way I could slowly interject good, bad, ugly, and what I felt about situations. And I had a lot of opportunity to have talks with them. They went to school. My kids, for the past 4 years, we had moved from where we were, and their school was about 30 minutes away. And I had time in the car to have long conversations with them, arguments with them, but it was just, I've spent a lot of time with them. I've been fortunate. Now, my husband worked a lot. He was fully corporate. He worked in the financial industry. And so if the market is open, he's at work, and he'd be gone from 7 to sometimes 8 o'clock at night. So I had a lot of time to spend with the kids. And, through that, I know my role with each of them, and I've learned each of them and what they need. And I'm thankful that they do talk to me about almost everything.
One of the things you mentioned was leaving broadcast journalism to raise them. Um,
Mhm.
we've talked about how it's almost the opposite of mom guilt. How you look at the job and you're like, wait, should I have really left that? I was
Yeah.
pretty good at that.
Okay.
How did you work through those kinds of feelings to stay present with the
Oh,
kids?
I cried sometimes, and they've
Mm.
seen me cry. They've seen me be disappointed and want to have certain opportunities and go after them. And We've just always been honest. And I have letters from my kids. I remember years ago, Oprah had an open casting to be like a new talk show host on her show. And my husband flew me to Atlanta, and he and I went. It was the first time we actually left the kids alone, because I never left my kids. And we flew, and, and I remember my daughter wrote me a note, and she told me, she was little at the time. She might've been like 9 or 10. And she wrote, "Mommy, I want you to go for your dreams. And I want you to," she was encouraging. She's been the wings beneath my wings, the wind beneath my wings. She's been the one to say, "Mommy, go after your dreams." What you pour into your children, they turn back and pour that into you as well. And I think that anytime you show love to someone and you encourage them to be the best that they can be, they will appreciate that, and it will come back to you. And for me, it's come back to me in the form of my children, in the sense that I'll never forget the day that my daughter got her acceptance letter to the University of Miami. And in that acceptance letter was a full ride to the university. She had gotten into Princeton, she got into Duke, she got into all the top schools in Florida, all of her schools, all of her choices, but she really wanted to go to UM, and she didn't want to go too far. And I was like, okay, great. I got to this point where I told my kids, hey, you can go to Harvard, you can go to Yale, you can go to all these schools. And I said that because no one had told me that I could do that growing up. And my parents were immigrants to this country, so they didn't understand the different tier levels of colleges and Ivy League. And, they weren't college educated. And so when that happened, when I had kids, I told them, well, they're going to be Ivy League, they're going to go. But then not realizing that my husband and I ended up doing well for ourselves, well enough financially that unfortunately my kids wouldn't qualify for financial aid. And because I qualified for financial aid, I thought all this time, okay, my kids are going to go to Harvard, they're going to qualify. And then I realized that I couldn't really afford to pay $60,000 a year for her to go to school. I mean, I could, but I would have to sell all my possessions, and it would be really tight, especially knowing I had 2 more coming. So I say this to say that the day that she opened that letter, it was like God said to me, all the sacrifices you've made wasn't in vain. It was for this moment, and there'll be more, and so for me, that's when I realized that the time that I set my dream aside, and it became a dream deferred, because I know that once you become a parent, it's not about you anymore. And it's really about the unit and what works best for that unit and those children. And so I took parenting very seriously. And, but again, there are days I've cried over it and I've looked back, but I've had a great career and I can't complain. I get to work for the Miami Heat as a broadcaster. I worked on, I did traffic down here in Miami locally for 2 major networks, which is unheard of, to have never left the Miami market and to still made it on television. I was a morning show co-host on the radio. So, I've hosted a high school academic game show for 11 seasons, 11 years of me doing that. So even with that, I can't cry over it because I've still had a great career.
Mm-hmm.
And the kids came out good.
Mm-hmm. I love that you said that it was the dream deferred, though. That's so powerful. How is motherhood part of the dream?
Ooh, motherhood was a shock. It was a surprise.
Motherhood is not what in sitcoms, like in TV shows, when there are kids, like the kids are just magically taken care of. Like there's plenty of time to sit on the couch, drink coffee, make funny jokes. And the kids are just always taken care of. That's just not how they show up in real life.
Not at all. Not at all. It's so funny. I know you know this. You have little ones right now. You're in the thick of it. I like to think that I'm kind of out of the thick of it right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in a different phase in my life, which is actually pretty cool. But, looking back at the whole thing with motherhood, I was 12 weeks pregnant at our wedding. So it was a shock. It was like, we got thrown into it. I was 23, I had just graduated college. So, it's funny. I was somewhere with my daughter yesterday, and happens frequently. They'll hear her say mommy, and they'll look at her and they'll look at me and be like, mommy, that looks like your sister. One day we were in the bank and we were arguing, and my daughter went around the corner and the lady said to me, your sister just went that way. And I was like, sister, I birthed that child. I pushed her out. I was so offended. I was just like, you don't know what I went through with that little girl. So it was so funny because, motherhood was definitely, I don't want to say it was a part of the dream. It was, I had a great mom, and I still do. She's still around. I have a great mom. And, but she definitely mothered differently than me. So I don't know how much of a dream it was for me and how it's played into everything, but it's definitely been the best blessing that I've had in my life. And I love my kids. So like, yeah, you feel about your kids. They drive you crazy, but you just love them so much.
Mm-hmm. I love the part of your story that your parents are immigrants, and here you've been able to do so successful that you don't qualify for financial aid, and that your daughter's been able to get into
Yeah.
these Ivy League colleges. Talk to me a little bit about what that means for you and your parents even.
Oh, thanks. That's a great question. My parents are from Jamaica. They both were born in Jamaica. They both have Cuban heritage as well. And so very mixed family. We definitely stood out in the community that I grew up in Miami. And my younger sister has red and blonde hair. She's very fair skinned. She's probably a little bit darker than you. My mom is like your complexion. It's been interesting because coming from a Jamaican foundation and growing up in a Jamaican home, it's very different. Culturally, it's interesting when you're first generation American too, because you don't quite fit in anywhere. And I say that because your parents are raising you the way they were raised based on their culture in their country, but you're living in a different country with a different set of cultures. And there's a lot of friction between the cultures in the sense that, you have one culture that's holding on, your parents, they're holding on to their culture. And then you have that new culture that you're slowly assimilating yourself into. And the new culture, because growing up, people didn't understand a lot. I grew up in a predominantly Black neighborhood, and why is my hair curly like this? Why, they would tease me. They would, tell me that, what are you? Are you Black? Are you white? What are you? My family looks very mixed, and I dealt with a lot of the, why do you guys look that way? Or you talk proper? If someone had a question, I'd say, excuse me, or ma'am, and it was just the things that I said were just a little different because culturally I was different, and I never really felt American. Right. When I was around Americans, I felt Jamaican, but then when I was around Jamaicans, I wasn't born and raised in Jamaica. So it is a little different. And so you're just like this in between being, and you're just trying to, you straddle your different worlds. And then also ethnically too, how you, that's a whole nother discussion too, how you view yourself. It's interesting because growing up, when you are of Caribbean descent, you identify yourself by the island in which you're from. And that is it. It's not a black, white, because especially Jamaicans are very mixed people. It's hard to just slap a label on you and say you're this race or you're that, because we're out of one many people is Jamaica's motto. It's their national motto. And so it's interesting too. And you have to pick a color. Yesterday I was filling something out and it wanted me to like pick one thing. And it's interesting and very different to have to do that. I was told I was Black in this country when I was in like the fourth grade. I remember I had a teacher and I was like, I'm not Black, I'm Jamaican. What are you talking about? Like what? No, Black. And these were race was never talked about in my home. It was culture. So that's also something you learn to deal with, and growing up in America and being an American born, person. It definitely is interesting. But my parents are very proud. My dad eventually got his college degree when he was 50. He went and he finished up because he had started his degree when he first got here to America. He was about 19. Both of my parents had met in Jamaica when they were like 16-ish. And then they found themselves together at a party again when they were about 19, 20, and they got married at 21. Both of them were very young, got married. And, they've raised three beautiful daughters. I'm the middle. My older sister, she's a nurse with her master's in health sciences. And then I have a younger sister who's what is her title? I want to say I don't want to mistitle because she's in the US Army and she's a dentist. And hold on, I'll tell you right now, because she had just written it down for me the other day. She's a major in the US Army and she's a dentist and she does like oral surgeries and she does everything. And we've all, been successful, all married, doing well in life, all college graduates. I'm the one with the least amount of education because I just have my bachelor's and both of my sisters have moved on, but
just your little old bachelor's.
No.
What in all that you just said, there's so much that I want to continue to talk about, but the thing that kind of struck my heart in how hard it must have been growing up here was when you called yourself an in-between being. How did you cope with not quite fitting in?
I say this now that I was in between being, I don't think I necessarily felt it as much while I was growing up because I lived in a community that had a lot of Caribbean people. So although I was in between worlds, I was very insulated as well. My mom was very involved in her high school in Jamaica. They had an alumni association here in Miami. So I participated in everything that they did. I even started, singing on stage and reciting poetry. And that's how I kind of got my break in broadcasting and being on television and stuff, doing things. I entered the Little Miss Jamaica pageant when I was 15. So I definitely was insulated within our culture, within my Caribbean roots here in Miami. So we have Miami's a melting pot. So no matter where you're from, if you're in Miami, you will find your community. You will find people, whether you're from Bolivia, you're from Venezuela, Cuba, forget it. If you're Cuban, it's all over here too. So you have your communities here. So I would say that. And then even, and I grew up with a lot of, I have amazing Black American friends that grew up with me. So I have that, I was able to morph them and you figure it out. You have no choice. You figure it out,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Have you had to deal with similar issues in raising your children?
Not necessarily. It's interesting. My husband's family is from Trinidad in the Caribbean. So not particularly. The one thing that I do look for, like when I had to choose schools for my kids, I did look for very diverse schools for my kids. I didn't want them to be one of. I wanted them to have many choices of friends to choose from. And I wanted them to, because that's the one thing that I didn't have where I grew up. It was just one group of individuals. Like everyone kind of looked the same for the most part. And I want my kids to be able to be with people who not only look like them, but people who don't look like them and people who don't have the same backgrounds. Because I feel like in order to truly maneuver through life and through society, you need to be able to relate to other people. And I find a lot of the issues we have in this country is not that people are bad people. And this is me going off on a tangent or anything. We all have our different views and there's nothing wrong with that. If you want to be Republican, that's fine. You want to be Democrat, that's fine. I think at the end of the day, we just need to understand that we all have different life experiences that then help to cultivate our opinions on decisions that we make in life and who we choose to be around. But when you choose to just keep yourself isolated to one group of individuals and you don't even attempt to learn about other people and attempt to learn about other ways of lives, of living and different things to do, that's when we have problems. When you choose to stay ignorant and to stay cocooned in your world, that's a problem. That's when we run into problems. That's when you run into bigotry. That's when you run into hate. That's when you run into stereotypes. You run into all that. So not necessarily. I try my best to avoid that with my kids.
Yeah, I love that you look for diversity. And I think you are 100% correct. That is like what I try to preach to people. You have to listen to people who are not like you. And I don't care what we're talking about, whether it's culture or race or religion or sexuality, whatever it is. You put that so nicely. I just, amen. Amen.
Oh, thank you. But you're doing a good job too. I see what you post. I see what you say. You have a big heart. It's just whether or not people want to choose to open their minds to things and want to choose not to be ignorant. My husband laughs at me because we'll be driving. We drove past a building the other day and it said aeronautics or something, dynamics. And I was like, what is that company? We don't have a lot of aerodynamic companies here in South Florida. And he's driving and I just whip out my phone and I start Googling the company. And he's like, are you Googling? I said, yes. I want to know, like, what do they do back here? They have like a high security. What do they do? What type of jobs? And I'm just a very curious person. You probably are too, because you have
journalism.
Exactly. I want to know. I want to learn. Like, I am constantly eager for more information. And I think that, if we all just had that curiosity and knowing, why is someone afraid of, immigration? Why do they not want immigration? Why do you not want immigrants? What are you trying to say? What is your story? And when we take the time to really understand, maybe someone had a bad experience and that's what's fueled their decisions. So we have to be willing to listen to someone instead of just like chopping them down before we hear their point of view. And I think we do that a lot, especially on like Facebook and social media.
Yeah. And then on the other side of that, sitting down with someone who is an immigrant and learning that side of the story. I think as journalists, we got the opportunity to talk to people we didn't agree with personally because we had to have them in the story. And I think that was such a good learning experience for me to always get both sides of every story and find out, oh, there's heart. This is not just people hating each other. There is heart and meaning and reason behind people's thought processes.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's experiences, if what I found, I worked at the state attorney's office in Broward County for 4 years as their community outreach director. And, I got to work a lot with law enforcement, and I really got to understand a lot of law enforcement was telling me, you'll get someone to come down here to Florida. They'll recruit, come to sunny South Florida and come to Miami and be a cop. And they're coming from the middle of America, where they haven't dealt with a lot of people who look different than them. And you can have 3, 4, 5 different people who could be my complexion, who all speak different languages, who all culturally have different heritage and experiences, but yet we all present the same, but yet you don't understand, you don't know. And so you get people who come down here and they are in a culture shock, and they may be afraid because they don't understand. Like the community I grew up in, I am not afraid to be around guys who may have like dreads coming out of their hair or gold teeth or, their pants sagging, because I grew up around a lot of that. I'm not frightened by that, but I am a little bit frightened when you take me out of my element and you put me around maybe a group of people that are, bikers, and I'm seeing leather jackets and long beards and I'm seeing tattoos and things that I didn't grow up around may frighten me a little bit, and because I'm out of my element. So my heightened sense may be up, but these are some of the trainings that we talk about with like law enforcement. I don't mean to get on that tangent in any way, but we have to be able to assimilate into other groups and other societies and other, in order to really fully understand and have and want to understand other people.
I love that.
Our biases will definitely frighten us sometimes.
I'm like, this should have been our full conversation, because that is so good. And I think just opening up our eyes and seeing that we all bleed the same. We're just people. We're trying to chase joy and love and meaning in our lives. I love how you meet your kids where they are in their space, whether it's sporting or social media. Tell me about why that's important.
Social media is so funny. I think it's important. I know a few people who are adamant about not letting their kids go on social media. And I'm not that mom at all. I've never been that mom. The 9-year-old has been on social media for a while. We monitor it. His account, his IG is connected to my IG. He actually gets more views than me. He posts little videos of him playing this video game. On one of them, he has like 893 million views or some kind of crazy number. No, I do not. I almost have to show you, because it's just so crazy that this kid has all these views. But I monitor it for him. Like, look at this, 297.
That's amazing.
Views.
Amazing.
Just for You see, and these are all these little videos he posts. It's just video games. I monitor things. I think with social media, it's important. I knew that social media wasn't going away. And when phones started, I think my daughter, she got her first phone when she was 8 or 9, a little flip phone, nothing major. She's now 19. So think, 11 years ago. I wanted them to learn how to comfortably, first of all, they have to learn how to self-discipline. They have to learn that when something illicit pops up, what are you going to do? And we've had those conversations. I never faked names for private parts. I've always been open with them. You don't let someone touch you. I've always been and I say what I mean. I don't sugarcoat things. I'm a little raw. I'm very raw in my house. And some people may think that's a little crazy, but I think that's why my kids are close with me as well, is because I say what I mean and I don't sugarcoat it. And so I've had conversations with them with social media. When something comes up, what are you going to do? Because it will. Okay. They are going to stumble onto porn sites. They are going to see things. But if you don't train them how to self-discipline, and you don't train them how to deal with these things, then when will they ever be ready? When they're 18, 19, they're still going to be just as curious then. And I'd much rather, help guide them and be a part of the process as they're growing. Even with dating, it's funny because at first my husband would be like, no, she can't date. Our daughter can't date till she's 21, and as she started getting older, he was like, you know what? I don't know how I feel about that, because I actually want to be able to guide her. I want to be able to be there while she's learning how to date, so that we can help guide her in her decisions and what she should tolerate, be there for her if there is a breakup and we catch her when she's fallen, and same thing with my sons and our sons. And we've been able to do that. And you start to really change your views. It's easier to say, no, they can't do this, they can't do that. And I know some parents that just don't want to deal with it. And so they just say no, no, no all the time because it's easier for them. It definitely was harder for me to pay attention. There were a lot of arguments. There were a lot of random phone checks and me seeing things. Oh my God, the middle school years with the boys and seeing things that I did not want to see. But it also helped me to help give them guidelines.
I like to ask my guests what their number one tip is to finding more joy in the everyday, the good, the bad, and the in-between.
Sometimes taking a nap. My number one tip is sometimes just sleep it off. Yeah. Listen, yesterday I was really in a mean mood, and and it had to do with my cycle, definitely, not to blame it or anything, but definitely I knew that I was off. Recognize and acknowledge that you're having an off day. Tell the people around you, listen, I'm a little off today. When I was a teacher, I would tell my students, hey, listen, not every day is going to be a good day for you, but don't take it out on me because I didn't do it to you. Just remember, I didn't do it to you. If you come in here with an attitude, it wasn't my fault. Just say to me, Miss Arneaud, I'm having a bad day. I just like to sit in the back. Please don't call on me. And I'll leave you alone. As long as you're not treating me bad every day. Number one tip, acknowledge the fact that you're in a bad place. Take a nap. Sometimes that's all you need is just to sleep. And if it continues, definitely see a counselor, talk to someone, your pastor, or sometimes not your pastor sometimes, because but you can, but I don't know. But I want you to talk to someone licensed and someone, who can really help you. Because sometimes it's a little bit more than just talking. Sometimes you may need more if your mental health is taking a hit. And, and get out and exercise. I go ride my bike, I go walk, I exercise, definitely get those endorphins going.
Yeah. But I love it.
Yeah. That's what I do. That's what I do.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I hope you loved hearing from Lisa Lee. Of course, I have all of her information in the show notes, and I want to thank you for being here on Happiness in Progress.